Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Salesforce Ben LinkedIn Live. And this time we're going to be talking about scaling forecasting in Salesforce. Now, forecasting is something that's core to Sales Cloud and to a lot of people on this call as Salesforce professionals or just working in the sales ecosystem. But it's something that's often very hard to get right, especially as you scale your business from an SMB all the way up to enterprise. And that's what we're going to be hearing about today. We're going to be specifically hearing about Zoom's story. So, obviously we all know Zoom. It's kind of, turned into a household name after the pandemic. And they shot up from a relatively modest $30 million in revenue to 4.5 billion after the pandemic. And because they were using Salesforce, a lot of us are going to be able to relate to this story in the way that they had to scale their processes to meet the demands of the business. So I'm going to bring on stage Henry and Derek. Hey guys. Who are ex-Zoom, and also Alyssa, who is a good friend of Salesforce Ben's and a RevOps specialist as well. If we could go to the next slide, please. So to just introduce myself, I'm your host, Ben McCarthy, the founder of Salesforce Ben. It's my pleasure to kick off this webinar today, and I'll hand over to Alyssa first.
Hi, everyone. My name's Alyssa, and I am the head of Salesforce at Arian. And I'm really looking forward to talking about forecasting.
Hi, everyone. Oh, sorry, Ben. Hi, everyone. I'm Henry. Nice to meet you, the CEO and co-founder of SPOVA now, but I was at Zoom for 5+ years. So excited to chat with you guys today. Derek.
Hi, I'm Derek. I'm COO and co-founder of SPOVA. Like Henry said, I was at Zoom for 5.5 years. We overlap quite a bit. We built the data team together. Excited to chat today.
Great. Thank you so much, guys. Well, I'll hand over to you now. Best of luck, and I will see you later on.
All right. Thanks, Ben. Awesome. Thanks, everyone, for joining. We're super excited to chat about forecasting, talk a little bit about Zoom's journey from 30 million to 4 billion as we were scaling up forecasting. And, we want to make this really conversational, so we don't have that many slides. So feel free to just ask questions and we'll answer those at the end. So for a quick agenda here, I'll talk about the timeline for Zoom's forecasting and how that some of the tooling changed over time. We'll talk about why to get it right, which Alyssa will come in. And we're really excited because Alyssa has a lot of awesome experience in not only Salesforce, but also RevOps. And she'll talk about Salesforce basics in basic forecasting in Salesforce. And then we'll talk specifically about what we did at Zoom, the process during the week to get the forecast dialed in, and also the tech stack we used. And then Derek will talk a little bit about what we're doing at SPOVA, and then we'll go to the Q&A. So first, I just wanted to kind of anchor everyone into the 30 million to 4.5 billion. I won't talk a lot about 2020 plus. We all know that Zoom kind of just shot up out of nowhere. But from 2013 to even 2019, Zoom grew relatively really fast, from 30 million all the way to 700 million in only a few years. And from 2013 to 2015, I think it was very simple. Zoom just went live with the product, and it was very simple. There was no Salesforce instance. Every opportunity could be discussed with the sales team. So there was really no need for forecasting. You could just go around the table and say, hey, where do you think this opportunity is? And the head of sales, Greg, could cover that really easily. So like we say here, simplicity really wins the game. By 2016, that's when we implemented Salesforce and started to grow the sales team. And at that point, it was a larger sales team to manage. So actually, Derek was the first analyst to support our head of sales, Greg Holmes, at the time, in getting him ready and prepared for the Monday forecast meeting, where now there were many salespeople and then managers. And then we'll talk a little bit about that later on. By 2017, Zoom started to grow really quickly, and dialing in the forecast accuracy became a top initiative of the company. And that's really when we grew the data team size to support the go-to-market and also the tooling. And forecasting was a primary component to getting that right, because probably within the first month of the quarter, Eric, our CEO, and Greg, our head of sales, really wanted to know what they can do to get to that forecasted number that they share with the board or other people that was really important for them to hit. And then by 2019, Derek and I had a team of 80 people supporting the go-to-market, from visualizations, analytics, and then we also built a machine learning model to account for many factors to get that forecast really dialed in. And then 2020 changed everything. So our historical data was no longer as useful. So that's something we won't cover as much here, but there's a lot of things to cover even from that 2013 to 2019 period. With that being said, I'll turn it over to Alyssa, our RevOps and Salesforce expert, and she'll talk a little bit about forecasting with Salesforce. Alyssa?
Perfect. Thanks, Henry. That was a really interesting overview. I didn't know any of that about Zoom. I have lived through something very similar at UiPath. It was a similar story, so I'm sure this resonates with a lot of people on the call as well. So forecasting, why is it so important to get it right? And I think, Henry, you just touched on something that was really important and is one of the biggest reasons why we need to get it right, is because you're reporting these numbers to people that are interested in them, like board members, executives, investors, and potentially shareholders as well. So that is one of the biggest reasons why you need to get forecasting right. It's a goal metric that the company has committed to achieving. So it's something that, if you say you're going to make 100 million in a quarter, you need to make 100 million in a quarter. And if you don't, there needs to be, a reason why and a path to success laid out. It's also really important to be able to accurately forecast throughout the quarter, so that if you're behind or ahead, and you can make operational decisions as you go. So if you're significantly behind, we all remember last year, I think tech in general took a big hit in terms of sales. And it's really important to be able to forecast that you're going to potentially be behind, so you can make those operational changes, like maybe you pause hiring. Sometimes it's unfortunate decisions that have to be made, but accurate forecasting allows you to get ahead of your problems without, hopefully having them impact you too much. Again, it's a huge metric that worries everyone from the C-level or the C-suite. And then, of course, you need to give proper guidance to investors and shareholders. And forecasting accurately is notoriously difficult. You usually need a large set of historical data to be able to compare to, as well as forward-looking data, so you can understand what's actually in your pipeline. It's all well and good to say, yeah, well, I'm forecasting 100 million. If you don't have the pipeline to back that up, it's very difficult to have an accurate forecast. So these are just some of the reasons why it's difficult to get it right. Perfect. So a little bit about forecasting basics, specifically with Salesforce. Hopefully everyone on the call knows that collaborative forecasting is standard with Salesforce Sales Cloud. So everybody can start using this today if you have Salesforce Sales Cloud. And it's something that can be set up fairly easily, depending on your team. The roll-up can be done using the forecast. The roll-up for the forecast can be done using the role hierarchy. So you do need to set up your forecast hierarchy, but it can mirror, and it does mirror, your role hierarchy. You just need to enable the right users in each role. You can easily see your quotas and your progress, and then your pipeline in a single screen. I've got a screenshot on the next slide where we can dive into that a little bit deeper. But it's really easy to see your quota attainment. So you load in your quotas at the beginning of every quarter or every year if you have them for the whole year. You can see the progress of what you've closed so far. And then you can see your pipeline and all of your forecast categories as well, in terms of what's making up each category. You can also view the deal activity to see how your deals are progressing. This is really important, and I think something that has become more important in recent years is actual deal inspection. So looking at a deal and understanding exactly what's happening around it. So are we having the conversations we need to be having with our prospects? Are we sending paperwork back and forth? Has somebody committed a deal but not sent out even an offer yet? that is, a potential risk, and you can identify any risk in your pipeline by viewing the deal activities within Salesforce. You can also see change signals and push counts directly within the collaborative forecasting screen. So these are things like, has your deal amount increased in the last 7 days or decreased in the last 7 days? And how often are you pushing out or pulling in this deal? So it gives managers a bit of an idea as to, is this deal real? Is it continually being pushed out? Do we need to maybe move it to the next quarter? Is it actually going to close? And then lastly, managers can make adjustments. So if each one of their reps are calling a number, that's going to roll up to a total, but managers can also make this adjustment on top to put their own take on the forecast as well. And that can be done from directly within Salesforce. So if we go to the next slide, we'll be able to see some of this on screen. So unfortunately, I can't sort of do a live showing of collaborative forecasting within Salesforce. And this screenshot is a little bit small, so hopefully everybody can see it. But I do encourage you to try this out in a Trailhead org or enable it in your own orgs. Obviously, try it in a sandbox first if you want to try it in your own org. But what you can see on screen here is that there's a lot of color coding, so it makes it really easy to see sort of where people are at. For example, you can see there's green, amber, and red color coding in terms of progress. So you can very quickly see, maybe someone's lagging behind, and depending on where you're at in the quarter, this can be really useful right off the bat. You can also see some of the information on the right-hand side of the screen. So some of that deal activity that's happening. You have the timeline of recent activities. So it's very easy to see, are we having calls? Are we having meetings with our prospects? Because if you're not, and these deals are committed to the quarter, it's a potential risk that managers can then dig into, the details a little bit more, understand what's going on. Maybe the reps just aren't keeping up with their deals very well, and they need to make sure they're logging all of that information. So all of that can be seen from within this screen here. And Henry, if we go to the next slide. Perfect. So there are some challenges with using collaborative forecasting and just forecasting in general. So collaborative forecasting only allows for 4 different views. Now, if you're a smaller team or a smaller company that's just starting out, collaborative forecasting can be a really good starting point for you. And it may not be, the 4 views may not be an issue, but over time, as you grow and you want to sort of slice and dice your data in a little bit of a different way, 4 views can be a little bit limiting. So it depends on if you want to do product level forecasting, forecasting by opportunity splits, forecasting by different types of revenue. So for example, we forecast by multiple different types of revenue in the company that I work at. So 4 views can sometimes be limiting. The hierarchy is fairly rigid. I mean, we all know how the Salesforce role hierarchy works. And for complex sales teams where there might be a lot of overlays, a lot of people maybe co-selling in different teams, this can be a challenge. There's ways around it, but it can be a challenge within Salesforce. There's very few customization options. So you sort of get, the screen that you have. You're limited on certain fields that you can have, certain numbers of fields that you can have, and the real estate on the screen. So there's less customization than you could have potentially with, another type of solution. A big one is there's no snapshotting of data. So snapshotting of data is something I think Henry and Derek will talk a little bit about as well. But this is where you are actually snapshotting a point in time of your opportunity data, and then you can use that to compare and create these point in time analysis and comparisons so that you can see, for example, if I'm on day 50 of the quarter, where was I last quarter on day 50? Am I, closer to my target, away from my target? How am I progressing? So point in time analysis is really important. It's also difficult to know how real the deals are without clicking into each one. There are some Einstein tools that can be set up, but there's sort of mixed, I think, feelings about how well these work, and depends on your data hygiene as well. So if people aren't filling out the information in Salesforce, then the Einstein predictions may not be as accurate. So you do have to sort of click into each deal and understand where they're at. It's also a little bit more difficult to drill down into a specific sales rep's performance and look at their past performance from different quarters. And then there's also no tracking of the forecast history to understand how a rep or how a manager's forecast has changed over time. And what I mean by this is at the start of a quarter, a rep might be calling, let's say their quota is 500K and they're calling 500K, or they're calling 550 because they think they're going to go over their target. And then slowly as their quarter progresses, by the end of it, they're calling 250 and you're thinking, well, how are they so far away from their quota? But without this sort of historical trending of capturing what that forecast was at the start of the quarter, it can be difficult to sort of see where those gaps are to then obviously coach your reps and hopefully, improve their forecasting over time. I think we can go to the next slide, and I'll hand back to you, Henry.
Thanks, Alyssa. So now I'll talk a little bit about Zoom's forecasting process, and then go a little bit more into what we talked about during that Monday morning forecast call, and then a little bit about the tech stack that supported that. So I know that there's a lot of numbers on here, and but I'll walk everyone through it fairly slowly. And always feel free to reach out to me. We can discuss these numbers more if you have questions. So the first thing I want to do is connect to what Alyssa was saying about the point in time, or the snapshot. You can see on the top left-hand corner that it says day 45 out of 90. So if we were on the calendar year, we would be at day 45 of 90 days for this quarter. And this is how every Monday the forecast ran, by saying what day of we are we of out of the whole quarter, and what does it look like for now, but also compared to historical periods. And I'll just walk us through this example right here. So up top, I have what Greg, our head of sales, CRO, would talk about initially, which is he had a few segments of business. Let's pick mid-market, for example. He will look at the previous quarter and where that ended, which is Q4 actuals. He would look at what the quota was for Q1, which is the goal for this quarter, and what they had to hit. And then there's these forecasting categories, which is commit, and which is where the rep says, hey, I believe very high likelihood that this will be a part of my quota, and commit to that deal. Upside is more uncertain, but the potential to still land in this quarter. And then there's things outside of upside, which is usually called pipeline. And the bookings, QTD stands for quarter to date, which is at this moment in time. And then that's saying that up till day 45, we've closed $582,000 worth of business. And then to the right of that, what percentage does that represent to the quota that we have to hit? So in this case, it represents 38.3%. And then the Q1 pipeline is how much pipeline do you have left that is open, that you have to still close the remaining amount of deals that you have to close. And then we have this commit as a percentage of quota. So like I talked about, the commit represents a very strong likelihood that the opportunity will close, and you want to get as close to 100% as possible from a commitment standpoint, right? And then the next three are actually projections that we made. The first projection is based off of what we call pacing, and you can think about pacing where, let's say, by day 45. We've achieved 60% of our target, usually, of the quota. We look at that historical periods and say, hey, like historically, we've been at 60%. Using that data, where will we finish this quarter? So that's one type of predictive forecasting, which is known as pacing, or also called as linearity. And then you can use last two quarters, same time last year, or just the previous quarter. You can choose. The next one is average of 2-quarter pipeline. And this is where basic forecasting, you just put a percentage based off of the stage, and you say stage 1 has a 10% likelihood of closing. And then let's say your last stage 5 has a 50% chance of closing. I'm breaking up a little bit. Can people still hear me? Okay, great. So for the projected finish for the 2-quarter pipeline, what we do is we look at the percentage likelihood to close at every single day of those 90 days historically, and use that percentage and then calculate what is the likelihood of this closing. And then Derek will show you that, when he goes into talking about SPOVA a little bit and how to make that easier. And the last one is this data science projected finish, which is we use a machine learning model that looked at seasonality and a whole bunch of features that had enough data to predict, based off of the opportunity level. So once Greg, our head of sales, had this, he will walk through every segment, and then there's a total, which is the roll up. And from that, he takes that to Eric every Tuesday, which is their executive meeting. But the chart below where I had mid-market is also something like a manager will look at. So let's say you lead mid-market, and this is Q1 of 2024. We look back many historical periods and say, hey, from a pacing perspective, where we are, how much do we have left to go? And then the one I want to cover is this on the right-hand side, pipeline coverage rate, conversion rate to quota. And that's saying how much of the pipeline you have to convert to achieve your quota that you have in open pipeline. So if that number is really high, let's say it's 100%, that means you have to close 100% of your pipeline, and that's not very likely. But looking at historical data, you can say, hey, what is the likelihood of me closing the remaining pipeline? And because we're using this point in time snapshot, those percentages are changing over time. So if something is in early stage by, let's say, day 80, the percentage likelihood to close would be very low looking at the historical data, and we would know that. And then similar to pipeline coverage. And the last thing I'll just point out is this weekly pipeline change. Every week since this meeting is on Monday, we start with what was the beginning pipeline at the beginning of last week, and what were the delta changes, in the opportunity? What was new and pulled in? What was won, got that reduced it, lost, and then amount changes, and then slipped to future quarters. So you can dive into any of these opportunities and know how the pipeline was changing if you had questions about that. So we automated all of this using a big tech stack, which I'll talk about in the next slide. But this is essentially what Derek was doing really manually when we were kind of a little bit smaller in Excel spreadsheets. But obviously, as the team grew, this took many hours to complete all this analysis and prepare Greg for that Monday meeting. So this is a typical go-to-market tech stack. A lot of the people Derek and I work with now are at different, companies building out their own go-to-market team, and it requires a lot of people and tools. So a typical modern data stack or analytics stack would include a ETL ingestion tool. This is taking data out of Salesforce. You store it somewhere, which is usually, we had both Snowflake and Redshift. You have to transform that data into the right table setting. So saying day 1, day 2, and all these other transformations, which we use DBT. And then you push data back out to different systems using such like a reverse ETL tool like Census. And then finally, you get to a Looker Tableau. We use Domo and Tableau to surface insights to the rest of the go-to-market team. All these tools are very expensive. It probably costs annually $2+ million. We had about 25 analysts and 30 data engineers, and we had more people on the visualization side. And this is really a DIY approach where you're stringing together a whole bunch of tools to get the output that you want. And having a go-to-market tech stack and data team is not only about forecasting. There's many other analysis that Greg and other sales managers or marketing needed to do analysis on. But this is kind of the tech stack that we needed. And this is where kind of Derek and I, after working on this for 6 years and getting a lot of early morning urgent Slack messages or calls where this tech stack broke down, that we believe that there's an old way and a new way. the old way is doing this yourself, where you have to string together all this infrastructure, monitor it, and say, hey, let me spend a lot of money, hire a lot of people. And then it's a very disconnected experience in the modern like data stack, right? And then the new way is that if you know everyone needs this kind of data, I think what we're trying to build is an all-in-one solution that you don't have to worry about any of this infrastructure. And we help you with a lot of the analysis that I kind of just talked about. Derek, I'll pass it over to you, and then for a quick demo, and then we can go to Q&A and answer any questions that people have. So over to you, Derek.
Henry, while Derek's getting set up, I just wanted to say that this is very common, I think, across, enterprise companies. And it's important to also realize that smaller businesses and mid-market companies can benefit from tools that are more self-service. Because like you said, you don't want to be getting a call at 8 a.m. on a Monday morning or 7 a.m. on a Monday morning asking about, where is this data? And I think having that self-service element is really, really critical. So I'm really looking forward to seeing the demo.
Yeah, that's a really great point, Alyssa. And what I would like to say is that I think a lot of people which are a lot younger, probably just don't have that much resources to invest like in that tooling and data people. It's not like you hire one person and then they manage all of this, right? It's really like a large investment. And that's why we see only the biggest of companies do it. But in reality, it's that many people would benefit from this, just not having to manage this infrastructure and making it a lot easier, on them, because like no one cares about optimizing Snowflake to make it faster, or some of these transformations in DBT that everyone needs, and then thinking about the right visualization. So yeah, great call out. Thanks, Alyssa. Okay. Derek?
Cool. Can everyone see my screen? Okay, great. Yeah, so right here, I'm on SPOVA. I'm just going to walk through the forecast use case quickly. There are other use cases we're not going to cover today. Right now, we're on the forecast weekly dashboard. This shows you the forecast categories over time. As you can see, we have the point in time historical numbers for each of the week in the current quarter. This is only possible because we're doing the daily snapshot and the ETL on the Salesforce data. And then let's just talk through the forecast categories quickly. Right now, you can see we're just focused on the current week. We have the ARR new or close $1. That's the opportunities that you have closed for the quarter. And you can see we can see a point in time back into previous weeks of the quarter as well. And then next, you have your open pipeline. The total open pipeline, as well as each of the forecast categories. Henry talked about commit, which is, you commit to the closing of the quarter. The other ones are the less likelihood ones that people are putting into these categories. And then you have your target. And basically what we're trying to do here in the forecast call, is really to figure out, what's the reasonable possibility, or what's the reasonable conversion I can count on my open pipe to add on top of the deals and dollars I have closed already, right? So if you say, hey, ARR new plus all of my commit, if I assume all my commit converts at 100%, then, for this quarter, I can reasonably believe that I will finish at 148% of my target. And then you have your, you can add gut, you can add best case as well. And then we have the SPOVA forecast, right? What SPOVA forecast is doing is similar to what Henry was walking you through. We're looking at previous quarters point in time open opportunities and figure out their conversion rates and apply those conversion rates to the current pipe to predict a forecast, right? And any of these numbers are made up of AE rollup, and any of the AE rollup numbers are also made up of individual opportunities. And your forecast is really as good as the reps who are managing them, right? I know Coco Goff is a good rep here, and I heard that she closed a lot of deals already, but she's only committing to a 488 finish. So if I add what she's already closed plus commit, right, 488 finish. So maybe, I want to dive in and look a little deeper, right? So from here, I can go to player stats. So on player stats shows the performance metrics for all your AEs. There are a lot of useful performance metrics, but right now we're just going to focus on the forecast, right? There are 3 metrics you can look at for forecast for Coco. AR new, she's already closed 387,000, and she's at 92% of her quota, and she still has 515,000 open pipeline, right? So she's only telling me that she might close another 100K. That might be a little low, right? And then we have a SPOVA forecast. Basically, SPOVA forecast is calling that she will close another 200K, right? So let's just dive in a little bit deeper and then see what's going on. So once I click on that, I'm here in the opportunities, and I can just group by really quickly on the forecast category, and then let's just sort really quickly. And you can see for each of the forecast categories, we're showing you all the individual opportunities, and also including the closed one, which is at 100% conversion. So you can see that there are 3 deals in commit for Coco, right? And these 3 deals are basically we're calling a conversion rate, and this is basically the historical deals under similar profile in terms of stage and forecast category and segment and so on. We know they converted at 92% in the past, so we're applying this conversion rate to these deals, and we use the same methodology for all other deals as well with different conversion rates, as you can see. That's why SPOVA is able to call a forecast for Coco using this historical data, right? And that's because we're snapshotting, we're ETLing in the back. And your forecast is only as good as the hygiene of your pipe. And that's why we're also surfacing a hygiene score for each of your deals, right? And for this specific deal, you can see the hygiene score is low because the activity is low. There's a low number of contacts, and then the close date is due, so close date is in the past, and there are high push counts, right? And then you can also click into these opportunities and see the details of them, and also collaborate here as well. In addition, you can also create custom tabs. So to create a custom tab to help your reps to focus on managing pipe efficiently. So for example, here we're looking at current quarter late stage deals that are not in commit, right? Why is that? We want to ask Coco, what can we do today to move them to improve their chances of converting, right? To move them into commit, right? And to hover over the first one, and you can see that the close date is the past. So maybe there's something to do to even just managing these deals a little better. So that's it. That you can see that that's how SPOVA can help you forecast from a high level, so head of sales and manager level, and to a rep level as well, and to a deal level, right? On top of forecast, there are other use cases in SPOVA, including rep performance, coaching, roster management, and so on. And we would love to chat with you offline. I'll hand it over back to Henry.
Thanks, Derek. 1 second. Yeah, I think, can everyone see my screen? Okay, awesome. Well, that was our presentation. We're going to open up for Q&A. Alyssa really is an expert in a lot of things Salesforce and with her RevOps experience. So feel free to find her and add her on LinkedIn. And then myself and Derek, we just love working with go-to-market data. And forecasting is only one component of go-to-market analytics. And really, driving the whole performance. Like you could think about an engine, which is the go-to-market, and driving many components of it. But to do that well, you have to monitor all those pieces like almost in real time, so you can see what is going on and do more of what is working, less of what is not working. And I think forecasting will tie into some of the things that Derek talked about, like rep level performance, coaching, and all those things. So yeah, anytime people want to chat about go-to-market analytics, we love to do it. So Zaina, I see that you joined us.
Okay, just while we're getting questions up, Zaina, I just wanted to say, Henry, that was really interesting about the player stats. I think it's something that people don't necessarily focus on so much is, like you said, it's the people that are making up your pipeline and the performance of each individual that actually affects the pipeline. So I can imagine the player stats are really useful for looking at things like, is this rep having as many meetings as they were last quarter? Is this SDR converting at a high rate? Is he having, a high number of call connects, but maybe he's not booking that many meetings. So that indicates there's some coaching that needs to happen. So I can imagine you're able to get ahead of problems before they sort of even affect your pipeline or your forecast. You can get ahead of those things, coach your people, and then, your pipeline will obviously grow as you expected it to, and it will make forecasting a lot easier.
Absolutely. Like Alyssa, I think people are your biggest investment that you make training them. And then I think one of the things that Salesforce probably doesn't do as well, because the data model behind a Salesforce, the architecture, is very focused on the account and the opportunity. So when you want to look at a series of performance metrics, like to make sense of the whole picture on an individual or team, that becomes really difficult. I'm sure many of people on this webinar have experienced so many clicks that you need to do to go from, this one metric to that metric, and then not having it side by side to really understand what is going on, because the data model on the person is not as sophisticated. So great call out. Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you so much for that really insightful presentation, guys. Hopefully everyone attending now has a much better idea of how Salesforce forecasting can propel their organization forward. So now it's time for our Q&A. So please feel free to leave your questions in the comments below, and we'll try to get around to as many as possible. Okay, let's see what we've got here. So what customizations are made on Forecast?
So I'm not sure if that's a question for the Salesforce forecasting or for the SPOVA team, but in terms of customizations in Salesforce, I suppose it's more about how do you want to slice and dice your data. So we have, like I said, where, the company I work at, we look at multiple different metrics, including recurring revenue, one-time revenue, revenue from professional services. And so there's all different sort of metrics that we look at. And being able to customize, like Henry was saying, about looking deeper into teams or regions or things like that, it can be more difficult with Salesforce. It's just you're limited on what you can do. It's not a component that you can customize as much as you would a normal sort of Salesforce component, I suppose. And it's probably key to note that Salesforce themselves are using a mix of collaborative forecasting and Tableau. So it's not like it's something that Salesforce are using, I would say, as an out of the box function, because obviously their organization is incredibly complex. So they probably have a similar sort of set of tools that Henry was showing us earlier. But yeah, there's loads of different customizations that you may want to make when it comes to forecasting.
Yeah, I just add one last thing, is just that customization is definitely pretty common for a lot of organizations, even using different fields for the forecast category, or what different fields that you want to add to dollar amount and so on. So that's why we are making it super easy to customize, pick whatever field you want to use, approaching this problem from a data perspective. Yeah.
Okay, fab, thank you. Let's see, what do we have next? So I think this might be referring to a screenshot that you showed during the presentation. But does it show collaborative forecasting out of the box for Sales Cloud? Does it include for orgs with only the platform license?
Yeah, and I think I wrote back to Ethan on the LinkedIn Live, so I was answering some questions live as well from my phone. But the collaborative forecasting that I showed is the out of the box version, but it doesn't. I wouldn't say it's included for platform only orgs, only because it requires access to opportunities. And if I'm not mistaken, you don't necessarily have access to opportunities through the platform only license. So I don't think it would work for platform only orgs.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Okay. So Reese thought the forecast history was shown under the charts sub-tab. It looks to display week-on-week changes within the month, with then the option to review month-on-month within the year.
Yeah, Salesforce have enabled some newer features in the last maybe year, a little bit over a year. So they are starting to look at more of these point-in-time metrics. They're just not as comprehensive as most companies would like. I mean, if you have a huge data team and you're looking at a tech stack like Henry presented, you're going to be looking at deeper metrics than those charts, but they are a really good starting place, and they can provide some really interesting insights that you wouldn't have access to otherwise. So definitely a good place to start.
Okay, fab. So how would you manage part order forecasting of an opportunity when you might receive 60% of a deal, then look to forecast the balance of 40%?
That's a really good question. I mean, the guys at SPOVA might have a better answer than that than I do for that.
Yeah, previously the way we accommodate for that is basically adding another field is just for like a stretch amount, right? So you have the amount that you think the deal is going to land. If there's a stretch amount, then you can add another amount into that amount field for that stretch amount, and we can somehow accommodate for that. Basically, you have the committed amount and a stretch amount, and then we incorporate that into the commit versus stretch formula when we're rolling it up.
Wow, that sounds complicated. I'm already imagining all of the different fields I would have to build in my org to be able to accommodate that.
Okay, great. Do you have an ability to have reps add stretch goals for monthly forecasts? And an example is where an app could be closing, but they aren't sure if we can get revenue accounted for this month.
I think my mind goes down the same route, right? Like I think the stretch amount is one thing that we think about, and then also just if it's really about the timing, then it could just be using one of those forecast categories.
I was going to say the exact same thing, Derek. I think it's really about having clear definitions for your forecast categories and making sure reps understand which category a deal should be in. Something else that you could do is have a checkbox called stretch. So maybe you commit it, but it's in the stretch, or you put it in best case, but it's in the stretch. And then you want to, combine, for example, your best case or your most likely deals, but ones that are, have the stretch tag as well, so that you can see, okay, these are the ones that my reps are saying are almost commit, but not quite. And it's, it can get very complicated, but that's something that if that's common within your organization, it is important to be able to add in those sort of nuances because they will impact your forecast and make it more accurate.
Okay,
yeah,
cool.
I think to jump on what you're saying is that if you have really clear definition on what is in each categories, your process may not have to be as complicated, right? So if your definition is really clear, you may be able to do it really well without, burdening your Salesforce fields and org and your admin.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. So for the part order, wouldn't you want to forecast off orders in relation to the opportunity?
I would say that makes absolute sense. Not every company is going to be using orders, so that's something you would need to take into consideration. There's also this whole thing around a booking opportunity versus an actual billing. And I could go into this for, I spent 9 months of my life looking at the differences between bookings and billings at a previous company, but and trying to reconcile them. But there's definitely a forecast of your projected bookings versus your forecast of your actual billings. And those two numbers most likely are different and should be different, because forecasting your bookings for sales, especially when you have multi-year deals that are going to be paid annually, is a very different number to what you're actually billing for right now at this point in time. So having two separate forecasts for that actually does make sense.
Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. So just looking at some questions from YouTube now. How often do you take snapshots of your opportunity data?
That's a great question, Zaina. Well, we did it every day. So we have daily snapshots we can compare to any moment in time. And this is not just for the opportunity object, for all the primary objects in Salesforce, whether that's account, user, leads, contacts, we all take snapshots of that. And just having that actually will actually provide a lot of insights. And a lot of these analysis we do for opportunities, you can think about doing similar stuff for other objects in Salesforce.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. So can Salesforce Opportunity Field History substitute for taking snapshots of the data?
I think that Salesforce Field History is definitely really powerful, but in order to sort it out and account for when changes occur, you're dealing with a lot of timestamp data, and it gets complicated real quickly, real fast. So I would say from a technical standpoint, you can do it, but we've done it, and it definitely, gets pretty complicated.
Also, I think for custom fields is a little harder.
Yeah, that's a great call out, Derek. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So what were the biggest challenges of forecasting as you grew in company size, especially during the pandemic?
Yeah, I think that the pandemic definitely presented its own challenges. We use a lot of historical data for what we were showing you on that one slide to make the predictions. Obviously, the pandemic, the predictability went low because we didn't know what to expect and what was the future going to look like. I think the other thing, going back to kind of the growth period that we had prior to the pandemic, is just the flexibility of the data, forecasting and data. And what I mean by that is, sometimes we have a really large deal come in the millions of dollars, right? That obviously can have a pretty significant impact to your forecast. So to be able to dynamically remove those and then still have the rest of the forecast calculate. So things like that here and there will just be able to kind of on the fly give you different forecasts, and then you can triangulate what number you want to get to. So I would say definitely the flexibility of the system is really powerful as you grow.
Okay, cool. Thank you. So as a RevOps specialist, what advice would you give to other organizations aiming to scale their forecasting processes effectively?
Yeah, Alyssa.
I would say you need to have, like I said, those definitions in place. That's really, really key. So we've just rolled out at the company I work at now, we've just rolled out a new forecasting process. We've had very strict sales stage definitions, having those definitions for forecast categories, making sure that reps are understanding what makes up a commit deal, for example, because understanding the difference between where a deal is currently at in its stage and its forecast category are two very different things. So I think it's not so much what systems you have in place always. It's a lot of times it's what the enablement is for the users. The system should then enable the users even further to increase their forecasting abilities, for them to understand exactly what deals are going to be closing this month or this quarter, and getting into that really good cadence, making sure your managers are really on top of everything, and making sure managers understand how to forecast for their their teams as well. I think this is the really, really important part. And part of that is having access to those self-service metrics so that, like we were showing about the player stats, managers can actually dig in and understand what's going on within their own team. And they're not just calling a number out of thin air or looking at the roll-up of what's in Salesforce and just calling that as a number. They can really dig into what their teams are actually doing, because like we said before, your forecast is made up of everything that your team is putting into Salesforce. So it's not just a number that you're pulling out of a system. It's actually, how does each person on that team contribute to that forecast? So having really good definitions, making sure people are enabled, and then having your managers really set up that good cadence is what's going to help you propel your RevOps processes forward, I would say.
And I like, that's great call out, Alyssa. And my addition to that is, at least from our experience at Zoom, is that a lot of the sales and marketing team is looking for insights, and I'm sure our data team still got overwhelmed with questions about the forecast, about all these other metrics that people wanted and data points. Is to really focus on the insights, even if it's not voluminous, the few insights you can gather, and really not on the infrastructure. And it's I think that putting together this infrastructure and maintaining it is just so cumbersome. Even maintaining a Tableau server can sometimes cause issues. We had a Tableau admin who managed the servers there, right? And really just focusing on how to get those insights, I think are really the critical piece, even if you're starting out on spreadsheets, I would say. Yeah.
I think it's important to remember as well that these teams are overwhelmed with the amount of insights they're being asked to deliver across the organization. So go-to-market is probably one of the most demanding sides of the organization, because they need the insights now and they need them for each month, each quarter, each week for the forecast. But the data team is trying to provide insights across the entire company. What products are we selling the most of? Where's our discount? What are our margins looking like? These are things that the sales team don't necessarily look at or care about, but they're super important to be able to inform the company's strategy. So having a team that is entirely self-service, like the go-to-market team with self-service data points, is going to save the team that is working on your data a lot of time and allow them to deliver other critical insights to other parts of the business, and they won't be bogged down just with go-to-market.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, absolutely. And I think the last call I do want to make is that from the end user experience, still delighting all the end users with that experience, because they are trying to understand the business or trying to find an insight, right? And sometimes the modern data stack, whether it's Tableau and stuff, it is really difficult to build that experience that we're all used to, where you can click in, understand something, and that's the feedback that Derek and I got a lot building out, where they wanted more functionality that we cannot give them, but it was really painful for them, because it's kind of we show you a number, but you can't drill into it. And then they're like, I want, and then I think that is something also that we keep in mind as we're building and such. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely great. So how did Zoom leverage Salesforce's native forecasting features, and what additional tools or technologies were adopted to meet the company's quite complex forecasting requirements?
Yeah, Derek, do you want to take that? I think we left that the native forecasting pretty early on. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually don't. Either we didn't start using it, or we use it for very brief amount of time, or I don't even know if they had it at the time. But I think we very quickly used just the data, the opportunity data in Salesforce, and then moving it out, and then being able to roll up and do these additional accommodations, customizations in the data models to do it right. But ultimately, it's still the data from Salesforce Opportunity data. Like I said, the amount field, the stretch amount field, and then the forecast categories. But like going back to what Alyssa said is about having clear definition on what you should be committing, what you shouldn't be committing, and then having that weekly practice, that getting everybody to actually look at their opportunities and asking themselves clearly, using the data on the opportunity and account to say, is this reasonable that I'm committing, or is this more of an upside? And doing that religiously every day. Yeah.
Great. So a question about SPOVA. Can SPOVA analyze historical data and recommend actions to be taken on a particular opportunity that has a lower hygiene score?
Yeah, I think Derek, Derek was showing some of it where the hygiene score was low and the exact reason that is low. And some of the other features I think he didn't get a chance to is that how to take direct action and how we surface that to the rep. And then, have this idea that always surfacing them that hygiene can be improved, and just so everyone from their managers and up can be on the same page. Derek, anything to add there?
Yeah, and we're working towards even recommendations on specific things to say, to try, and so on, right? Yeah.
Great. So what metrics or KPIs did Zoom prioritize when forecasting revenue, and how did these evolve over time?
Yeah, I think I can talk about maybe from a structure level. So definitely at the top level, which is our C-level executives, including Eric at the time, that forecast got reported up. I think that from Greg and this forecast roll up, it was the metrics that they mattered was tracking the percentage to the quota or goal, and then how much remaining pipeline did you have. And this is where we talked about the snapshot, that point in time snapshot that Alyssa talked about, I talked about, Derek, is really, really useful. Like in a 90-day period, which happens really quickly, and there's like holidays and such, you really every day the data is changing, and you move it a stage, or the days get reduced, that you only have 20 days left to close and your sales cycle is 60 days. All that impacts what the forecast is, and the ability to calculate a real an accurate metric. And the other flip side, which Derek talked about a little bit, is the hygiene of the opportunity, right? So if you have really good hygiene where things are not close dates in the past, and you don't have a stage one opportunity 10 days left before the quarter, and your average sales cycle is 60 days, like all those things make it more and more accurate. And then but the executive level tracks a lot more than just forecasting, from an executive level perspective, from marketing KPIs to sales KPIs, and then broken out by things like expansion or renewals and things like that. So we're happy to chat more about all the metrics that we tracked and what was used at the executive level, and then further down on the manager level. So and then at the team level, I'll just stop with this, is you saw in our player stats that there's team performance metrics, and first line managers who directly manage a team use those metrics to see how the team is doing and where they can kind of assist on the coaching level. So different metrics for different groups of people.
I think ultimately the data as a metric is for that conversation and taking action and doing something with that, and not about reporting, right? It's not like, oh, every week we report this number and then the thing ends there. Having all this metrics and data connected throughout and then rolled up throughout is important, because then your whole organization can have the same conversation, can challenge each other to get to the truth, right? And that's kind of what we're going after. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Brilliant. Well, unfortunately, that's all we've got time for today. So thank you so much to everyone for attending. I'd like to extend a big thank you to Henry, Derek, and Alyssa for sharing their insights with us today. Before we sign off, any final words, guys?
Yeah, thank you everyone for attending this. We really love chatting about go-to-market data. It's really like a large part of what we think about, how to make it easier to understand from all those components, from a visualization standpoint, the metrics component. So if you ever have any questions, we're happy to answer them. Add us on LinkedIn, email us. We really, get excited talking about this topic. And if we can help, we would love to. So, and then thank you so much, Alyssa. Always a pleasure. Alyssa's awesome, on the RevOps and Salesforce side. So thank you, Alyssa.
Thanks, everyone. And hopefully any Salesforce admins on the call have been inspired to, get more involved in go-to-market metrics and RevOps and sales ops. So yeah, I think it's a great area to be in.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks,
Great.
everyone.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you again to everyone for attending, and we hope to see you again for our next webinar soon. Take care, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you.